Shall we begin?
Hey guys, Bob Kearns here, the unsung photographer, and I want to welcome you to our next episode in the Film is Cool thing. I know it's been a little while, it's been a crazy summer. I've got like 12 grandkids and they drive me more than a little nuts. There's always stuff going on. But I'm back. We had a workshop out in the universe being advertised. It's October 4th, of 2018. And that's coming up on the 21st. So if you're interested in that, I strongly suggest that you get to my webpage and sign up, because I've only got 1 or 2 spots left. It's almost gone, and I've only put it out in Facebook like day before yesterday, so it's moving along really well. Last time we talked about TLR, specifically a Mamiya C330, a nice camera. And I said I wanted to talk about Hasselblads, but in the meantime, I got a couple of questions about other similar system cameras, and specifically Bronicas. So I have some Bronicas over here on this side, and a Hasselblad over here on this side, to show you what the systems were like. All right, so first, let's look at the Hasselblad. What is grand about the Hasselblad? Well, first of all, nobody in the universe has yet to throw any mud on Zeiss glass. Carl Zeiss, what a lovely man. And this is a Sonar 150 millimeter f4 lens. It is a prime lens. It doesn't zoom, it doesn't jump, it doesn't dance. But what it does do is it has a shutter built right into it. So that means it will sync at any flash speed. And I'll throw up a couple of pictures here, throwing of samples from the studio, what you get from this lens. It's pretty spectacular. The other great thing about Hasselblads, and one of the things that I truly love, is that they are 100%, without a doubt, mechanical. They have no batteries anywhere, in, out, sideways, or the back. So they're 100% clockwork, made in Sweden. Since the late 1950s, the 500 series, I believe it goes up 500, 501, 502, 503, I think was the last batch. I think they went up to the CM or the CX. There are also Hasselblads that have a block on the bottom here that are motorized, and were very similar to the cameras that were taken to the moon back in the late 1960s. Fascinating time in our history. Hasselblads come to pieces, quite literally. This is why they're called system cameras. You can get a piece of this, a piece of that. They had different bodies. They had a very narrow body with a fixed wide lens on it. They had bodies which had extreme bellows on them for high-end macro photography at the time. Finders are interchangeable. I didn't bring out, I also have a prism finder for this, but this is a regular waist level finder that comes right off of there. If you want, you can take the ground glass out of them, right? And there are quite a few different kinds of this. There's the acute matte screens. There are some that have a split prism like this one does. There are some that have different markings on them. And they just pop out, and that occurred, I think, late in the 500 series, once you reach the CM classification. I think earlier than that they did not come out. I want to be gentle with this because they're quite expensive. And an acute matte screen like that for a Hasselblad film camera can run you $400. Ow! So I don't drop those. I'm very careful with them, and you just slide this back in, and that fastens the screen so it won't fall out anymore. Pretty impressive. And the body itself is just a box, right? With a clockwork winder on the side. and that stays open until you release the button. If you like, you can, there's a little lever here you can slide down and it'll stay open for long exposures, or if you have a digital back, or there's a lot of reasons you can use it. And then close it like that. It also has a mirror up function, so if it's cocked, I don't know if you can see the mirror there, but assume there is one, and you push that up and the mirror comes open, and now that's all wide open too. So mirror open, shoot, let go, and it closes. The mirror comes back down when you wind the camera again. These cameras were used all through the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. I think they stopped production in 2004, give or take. Don't send me nasty emails on that, but if you have the right date, I would be happy if you post it for me. I believe that's the case. One dynamic camera. We're going to sync the cameras again for the audio. Alrighty then, that being the case, Hasselblads were an absolutely tremendous piece of equipment that contributed significantly to photography, and professional photography in particular. That's a 6x6 frame. The frame is the exact same size as that. That's your negative size. It's a huge negative, way much bigger than a 35mm. Oh, this is empty, good. To load film in it, you would take a back, of which you could have several, by the way. And as long as you have a dark slide, that's this gizmo, right? You slide this in, it protects the film. You can take the back off, so you can have a color back and a black and white back, or you can have two different speeds of film. You can have a 100 ASA and an 800 ASA, or ISO. So it made it very, very flexible. You could do a lot with it in the field, but it was primarily wound up being used in studios because it was just a damn fine camera. And a professional could clunk, 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 clunk away at this thing for a long time because of the precision with which they were made. This is where you put the film. There's your 120 reel. It takes 120. There are 220 backs. There are 35mm backs. There are backs with special masks, so you could do what they called super slides, which were which would run in a 35mm projector. It's just a tremendous bit of camera. There's all kinds of different finders for it. There are prism finders. There are vertical stovepipe finders. There are a lot of accessories for it. Lens hoods, caps. I have a little clip-on thing, and I'll throw this up now. Okay, this is the Hasselblad in the studio, and on the front there you can see on the lens hood clipped is a little cold shoe that I put my transmitter in, and then the little adapter wraps around the wire here, and there's a PC socket on the lenses. All of your flash sync capability was on the lenses, because the shutter's in the lens. There's no shutter in the camera whatsoever, so every time you got a new lens, you get a new shutter. You need to make sure that both of these things are cocked before you try and put them together. If you try and jam them together without being cocked, you're in for a hassle because it'll lock up. And there's sometimes you can get them apart with a special tool, or spend a lot of money and get them fixed. So be careful. That's a 150mm lens. I also have the classic 80mm lens. It's just a little smaller. You've seen, I don't care who you are, you've seen a billion pictures taken with this lens. This is a Zeiss Planar. It is a 2.8 lens, which is really fast for medium format. Medium format because it's a bigger projection area on the film. Generally takes more light to accomplish that. So if you have a 2.8 in a medium format lens, if you do all the conversions, it's really more like an f2 or f1.9 something. It's a very fast lens and beautiful, and the bokeh is beautiful, and the depth of field with these cameras, because of the size of the negative versus the focal length, the depth of field is extremely shallow at wider apertures, so you have to be very careful with that. and you need to learn it. It also has a handy dandy film grip, which is left-handed, so you're free to click the shutter with this one. This is really cool. This, you have a million wedding photographers used to use this thing, lugging around, and they would put a big flash up here, and you could hold it like here. And it was a very strange arrangement, but it was very practical for a long day. Give you some way to move your hand around so it wouldn't get as badly cramped up. Some of them also had a little cable release that would wrap around, and you could flick the shutter with your left hand if you cared to. The other thing I brought out here I wanted you to see, besides the glass and the camera, was this little gizmo. This is actually from, I believe it's from Photodiox, F-O-T-O-D-I-O-X, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And it is an adapter to use this beautiful Zeiss glass on my Nikon cameras. Like I have a D800 and a few film cameras and a D700, and I could even use them on a D7000 I have kicking around here. But what amazing portrait lenses. As long as you're not afraid to do manual focus, off you go. Okay, so that's a basic overview of what a Hasselblad 500 camera is, and that's generally the camera people refer to when they use the word Hasselblad. Now here's another one that's very similar in a lot of ways. This is a Bronica. Oh, and it's heavy too. This thing weighs a ton. That's a good, I don't know, 4 pounds. I don't have a scale, but it's pretty heavy. And it has a grip, but it's a right-handed grip. What are the pluses for the Bronicas? Well, the Bronicas were, at least the SQ-A, which is this is the model, is a more modern bit of kit, technologically speaking. These overlapped. As a matter of fact, this camera, this mechanical camera, outlasted these by quite a number of years, actually. And when these were released, these were electronically more sophisticated, and that's kind of the problem. It also has removable backs. Push your button here and take the back off. It also shoots a 6x6 frame. This particular one has a motorized grip on it. So it's click and turn, click and turn, click and turn, right? It also has removable finders. This is a prism finder that's on here. And where's the button for that? Oh, here it is. Sorry, wrong side. There's a prism there's a prism finder. Some of these came with built-in light metering systems. Okay, as did there's meters in prism finders for the Hasselblad as well. It also has nice ground glass on the top that's removable and interchangeable. Let's take the PC socket for this one is down here on the front of the body. Let me see, I'm turned around here with that gear on it. This is your 80mm lens. Okay. I also have a 150mm lens. It also is a leaf shutter. In other words, the shutter is in the lens, and it will sync at any flash speed, up to 500th of a second. There are 2 series of glass for the Bronicas. I believe they're all Zenzinon, Zenzinon lenses. This is also a 2.8 because it was competing directly with the Hasselblad, of course. It is an electronic shutter. In other words, it's controlled electronically. So if I show you the back of this lens, again, one more time, you'll see that it has a series of contacts on here. And this camera would also do through the lens metering with special flashes like METs. And you don't have that kind of electronics on Hasselblad. It just doesn't, at least not the 500 series. There are certainly more, the H series and the new digital ones certainly are all electronic. But here's the problem with having all this lovely electronics on the Bronica. Electronics, after a period of ages in time, with little tiny capacitors and stuff like that, they fail. And Bronica has been out of business for a long time. And there don't seem to be a lot of people around that will repair or Bronica Electronics. And if they do find the electronics for it, you know, it's just as old as the stuff that you're replacing. It may still be functional, but it's antique too. Let's talk about one other thing. This kit here, just camera and a lens, so camera and the 80mm lens, not even the 150, is probably going to cost you in the ballpark of $1,000, $1,200. Depending upon the condition. This one's in spiffy condition. I mean, this is just bright and shiny and beautiful. These also came in an all black without the chrome trim. I don't think they're anywhere near as pretty as the chrome. The chrome's gorgeous. With this big 150mm lens on it, it kind of looks like a, I don't know, some kind of a rocket ship or something, but they're beautiful cameras. I mean, they're just physically attractive. Bronica's, on the other hand, though they're nice cameras, they're a little bulwarky, right? They're a little chunky monkey. They're not as pretty. They don't have the chrome trim. You know, the shutter speed controls are on the side. There's lots of YouTube videos. You can get all the tiny details about how these things operate. But overall, you can buy this kit here without the magic handle, without the power motor, probably for about 400 bucks. That's a big chunk of change different. Both of these cameras, I have a similar one for them, but I didn't bring it out. You could shoot Polaroid film, because the work process back in the day, you didn't have a preview in the back of your camera or a way to tether. So when you wanted to see what your lighting setup was without waiting to develop a film or a whole roll of film, you would just throw a pack of Polaroid film in here, and then click that on, and click that on the back. Like it was the back has a dark slide, just like everything else. Pull the dark slide and shoot yourself a Polaroid. And Polaroids were, I don't know, I think 80 ASA, and they had black and whites that I think were 3000. There were some very interesting films available. So you could pretty much be sure that you were matching what you were using, and off you go. Of course, back in the day, people shot, for print anyway, shot transparencies because it was easier for the print industry to deal with. They didn't actually make slides out of them, but those transparencies were very critical to exposure. Slide film has a very small dynamic range. It's not very forgiving on either side. So you needed to be really accurate, and you would go out and you'd meter, but just to make sure, you'd shoot a couple Polaroids, show that to the art directors, you know, see how they felt about the set design and the lighting and all that, and so you could test your production before you actually went into production. So that's what they were for. They wouldn't use the whole film, they would just use the 6x6 area. Polaroid film is bigger than that. It's like 3.5 inches by 4 inches. It's pretty big, and that may not be accurate either, but close enough. So those are two really wonderful, if you want to get into medium format, you can always just dream about this one. They are tremendously fun to shoot, and they've got that ka-clunk when you click the shutter. That it's just a special sound. Yeah, it's something a little similar with that, but it's not quite the same. But the Hasselblads are unique in all the universe. I truly, truly, truly love them. Is this all wound up? Yeah, there's no film in it, but it's a really nice piece of work. This, I really love it. Okay, so that's Hasselblads and Bronicas. I do have a couple other gadgets out here I wanted to show you. Oh, dark slide's out. That's funny. But I have two gadgets sitting up there in the left-hand part of the table. My left, your right. That you're going to have to deal with if you're going to get into medium format cameras. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes. You have to. You have to. Put baby back together here again so I can put her away. And here they are. And you hear me preaching about these a lot. I don't mean to be preachy. Modern digital SLRs, I think you should still have a light meter, but a lot of people don't. That's what I'm going to show you, is a light meter. And this is kind of an old school one. This is a Sekonic Studio Deluxe 2. You can still buy these. You have to go price them online. I think I got this one used secondhand for about 50 bucks. So here's the trick with these I wanted to show you. Let's say you go find one of these cool meters, and they work wonderfully, but they're for constant light, for out in the sun or constant lights in the studio. They're not a flash meter, but they're great to have in your bag when you're out traveling around. These come with this gizmo here. It's a little slide that goes in the top. So if you're in a cloudy day like this, or inside in the studio, that's the way you would use it. If you're outside in bright sunlight, you would take this slide and put it in there. And it changes the scale. And there's two different scales on the meter that you read. I'm not going to teach you about all that, but let me just say that if you buy one of these used, make sure that you got the slide. I see hundreds up over the years of these things, and they never have the slide. Everybody loses them. So that's horrifying. Nice meter. If you need to pick up a meter cheap for shooting outdoors or constant light, go look at that one. This is another older meter. This is a Sekonic 408. This is a nice meter, even used nowadays. They're probably about $275 or $300, maybe less. Shop around if you can find one. You could look at it. You really want this one because it has a spot meter on the side. So if you're doing landscapes with a medium format camera or a larger format camera, you can sit here and you scope it, and it's a 5-degree spot. It's not a 1-degree spot, but you can certainly pick the shadows from the highlights and get your readings at a distance. And it's a reflective meter like you would have in a digital camera when you're using it as a spot meter. However, when you're not using it as a spot meter, it is an excellent Sekonic incident meter, which I highly recommend if you're doing any kind of portraiture or still life or something where you can get up to your subject. I can use this outdoors a lot because I can take an incident reading, I call a reference incident reading. So in other words, if you've got something over there that has shadows in it and the sun is behind you or whatever, you can just go ahead and take a reading in the shadows where you are, and surprise, it's the same. And so it's a referenced incident reading. Yay. All right, boys and girls, that's a lot of information, a lot of cool stuff. The next time we get back to Film is Cool again for part 3, we're going to look at a little cadre of 35mm cameras, because quite honestly, 35mm cameras aren't that different. Some of the controls are in different places, but I've got a number of those guys that I think are interesting. And then I got a couple requests. Everybody wants to learn how to develop film. There are lots of those videos already out there. For you to stand and look over my shoulder while I shake a tank and put liquids in and out, I think is horrifyingly tedious. I don't know that it would show you anything, but if you have questions, I certainly don't mind answering specific questions. I develop black and white and C41 color. C41 is the kind of chemical process I use. Pretty much that's well, it's not the only one left, but it's pretty close to the only one left. The other color process that's left is for transparencies or slides, and that's called E6. Now, I don't know of any other commonly available kit-based products. There's a lot of experimental stuff for weird processes that you might want to do, cyanotypes, and there's other things you might be interested in, but that's kind of extreme. That's for somebody that really is into processing and stuff. And I myself, I just like to make photographs, and I enjoy the process of film because it makes me stop and think, and I'm not just going click, 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 click. Instead, I'm taking my time, I'm metering, I'm looking at what's in the viewfinder, and I'm letting off a great, wonderful ka-thunk. And there's only 12 pictures on a roll. And a roll of film is, on the average, I don't know, $6 or $7. And then if you don't develop it yourself, you can send it to the Darkroom in California, which is a very fine lab. It's called the Darkroom, and but that's about $11 a roll. But they scan it for you. You get a small JPEG scan, which is nice. It's not printable very large. You couldn't sell big prints off it, but you certainly use it online or in Lightroom to play with. It's only a JPEG, so it's only 256 colors. I don't know any way that they can make you a TIFF. I think they only make JPEGs just of varying sizes. They do have very large ones, which if you get a nice shot and it's a JPEG, you can clean it up a little bit and certainly print pretty big with that. But depending upon the size of the print, there's surcharges for that. I think E6 is a minimum. I think that's a $2 charge up above that, so that's like 13 bucks for slide film for transparencies. And I shoot that occasionally, but very rarely. More just to, I'll shoot it in the studio. The colors are nice, the colors are beautiful. You have to light things a little differently because it doesn't have a, when things go dark, man, it goes to black really fast. So you gotta have a lot of fill light, and it's an interesting creature to work with. So, film's still really cool. People are getting into it. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of ins and outs. There's a lot of cool cameras that are still out there that work just great. I don't think this camera will outlive me, without a doubt. Bronica, every time I use it, I'm like, wow, I made it. It worked. I'm always a little afraid of it. Electronics are like that. Okay. All right, boys and girls. Remember, workshop, October 10th. If you missed it, I'm sorry. I've only got one seat left. I can't believe it. It sold out so fast. Questions, please send me questions. I'm happy to. I'm sorry it took me so long between videos. Life keeps interfering in the YouTube world. Sorry. I'm not making a living off of this, so that's how it goes. Even if you're on the right path, if you just sit there, you're going to get run over. That's a good tip. All right, boys and girls, we'll see you next time. We're going to do some more cameras. And I also have a review coming up for Aurora for HDR. That's coming up too. They were kind enough to give me a review copy, and that's going to be kind of fun because, you know, who still does HDR? You'd be surprised. Thank you. Have a good one.
Shall we begin?